Way back when, in 1996, there was a little-known underground game that got released. Maybe you've heard of it, Super Mario RPG. Developed by Square Enix and Nintendo, it was a departure from the classic platforming gameplay of previous Mario titles, instead opting to go for an RPG style of game. The soundtrack for this game was composed by Yoko Shimomura, who had previously composed the soundtracks for Street Fighter II and Final Fight. She was already fairly infamous in the video game industry, but the music she would compose for Super Mario RPG would cement her legacy. It's just banger after banger on the OST. Fight against Krullex, Rosetown, and the crown jewel of the soundtrack, Beware the Forest's Mushrooms. The song is a tonal masterpiece, creating the perfect atmosphere of foreboding and mystery, while also conveying a feeling of exploration and adventure. I stumbled across the song in a video and was inspired to try and make a remix out of it, and so that's what we're going to be going over in this video. The first thing to do was to find a Midi version of the song. Midi files are basically MP3s but without the actual audio. Instead, it's the note data split into different tracks. And luckily, I was able to find a really good copy on a forum that I'll link in the description. After that, all I had to do was drag and drop the file into Ableton, the software I use to make music. The very first thing I did was drag piano sounds into all the tracks to get an idea of what they all sounded like. From there, I chose which ones I needed and which ones I could delete. After that, it was time to start building the track. I didn't really have a good idea of what I wanted to do, so what I typically do in that scenario is just flip through some drum loops and put them over the song to see what I like. After a bit of trial and error, I decided to go for a drum and bass type of beat. Just as a bit of background, drum and bass is a genre primarily composed of fast breaks. The sample that most drum and bass is created around is the Amen break, which was taken from a song called Amen Brother by the Winstons. If you listen to pretty much any drum and bass or jungle track from the 90s, you can almost always hear some remnant of that sample. In modern day, drum and bass has been involved with new rhythms and samples being used for beats. The next step was to create the actual beat because I was still using the pre-made loop and I wanted to use my own samples. I usually use the loop I was using previously as a guide when laying down the kicks and snares. Then once I get the bass down, I add in extra stuff, like here, where I doubled up on the kick to make it sound a bit more unique. Then I dragged the hi-hats from another project I was working on to top off the beat. After the beat was done, I started messing around with some sounds for the actual track. I started with the lead, and to keep up with the energetic and retro feel, I chose a square lead, which gave it the gamey style I was looking for. After that, I went down the list of MIDI tracks assigning different sounds for each one, mainly using a digital synth called Serum to create them. After I had built that, I went around tweaking notes, especially in the lead where I added pitch automation to give the notes a bit more personality. With that done, I could have left the track how it was, but I noticed that the second part of the song didn't really fit well with the initial feel, and so I decided to switch it up by adding a dirtier lead and changing the beat to something more dubstep-like. In addition, I also layered some growl samples to lend a hand to the dubstep vibe I was going for. After that, it was mostly just copy-pasting the part from the beginning to bring it over to the second half of the song. With that also came a transition, where I used an EQ filter to get rid of the high and low end frequencies, which gives the sound a kind of radio-ish feeling. Then, I automated it to slowly lessen in strength until it was at the original sound. I thought the second drop needed a bit more in terms of substance, so I ended up repeating the main part again, except this time I raised the leads up an octave and added another one to give it more energy. Then for the breakdown, I wanted something super frantic, so I added a fast piano to create a bit of a chaotic mess of sound, leading up to an abrupt stop at an impact. I felt like it needed a bit more of an outro, so I ended up getting a weird creepy computer sample that transitioned into the original song. That ended up helping tie the song together thematically. Funnily enough, the last thing I worked on for this song was the intro. I used the opening notes of the main melody and added a bunch of ambience to make it sound more foresty. The song was pretty much done at that point, but it sounded a bit flat, so I added a bunch of risers to help the transitions carry more weight and make them less jarring. I also sampled the original game to give some flavor from the source material. The cherry on top was the Bowser laugh right before the beat switch. It added a bit of thematic cohesion, plus the lead I used in that part already sounds a bit like Bowser. After that, it was just tweaking and adjusting things to make them sound just right. Admittedly, I didn't mix this song super well, I made it over a year ago, oh well. But regardless of that, I released it on YouTube and people seem to enjoy it. That about wraps this up. If you like this style of video, be sure to let me know and I might make some more like it.